The crisis of modern imagination. We are not suffering from a lack of information, we are suffering from a lack of imagination. We begin here, in the quiet, aching emptiness that so many carry inside. Not sadness exactly, not depression in the clinical sense, but a flatness, dulling of the inner flame. A quiet voice whispers, something is missing, but we don't know what. This is the modern crisis, not just outer chaos, but inner desolation. We scroll, we consume, we work, we distract. But what we rarely do is imagine. Carl Jung believed that imagination was not fantasy or illusion, but a sacred function of the soul, a psychic organ just as real and vital as the heart or lungs. In his view, imagination was not escapism, it was engagement with the deepest, truest parts of the self. But in today's hyper-rational world, we exile the inner world. We favor logic over symbols, science over soul, productivity over presence. And in doing so, we slowly forget the language of the unconscious, the images, archetypes, and intuitions that once guided us. We silence the dreamer. We muzzle the poet. We shame the mystical, the creative, the inward-seeking voice, labeling it childish, irrational, or unproductive. Jung warned that when we repress the imagination, we don't become more grounded, we become more fragmented. The soul doesn't vanish, it retreats. And what's left is the mechanical man. Efficient, perhaps, but hollow. And so we live on the surface, while something ancient within us drowns quietly in the depths. But the imagination hasn't died. It waits, in our dreams, in our unexpected emotions. In the creative impulses we brush off as silly. It lives in the longing for something we can't name, and in the loneliness that distraction can't soothe. Jung's vision was radical. He believed imagination was the bridge to the unconscious, the key to healing psychic wounds, and the gateway to wholeness. What if the numbness you feel isn't a malfunction, but a message? What if the disconnection isn't depression, but an invitation to return, to remember, to imagine? Because the soul does not speak in facts, it speaks in images. And unless we learn to hear that language again, we may continue to drift, more informed than ever, and yet more lost. This is not just a psychological problem, it is a spiritual one. So the question is not, how do I fix my emptiness? The question is, how do I meet it? With imagination, with courage, and with a willingness to listen. Because maybe the soul hasn't gone silent at all. Maybe we've just forgotten how to hear it. Carl Jung's mental breakdown. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Carl Jung. In 1913, after his famous break with Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung entered the darkest period of his life, a psychological collapse that nearly destroyed him. He began seeing visions, hearing inner voices, experiencing terrifying images that poured into his waking consciousness like dreams he couldn't wake from. To many, this might look like madness, but Jung didn't run from it. He didn't medicate it away or distract himself with work or noise. Instead, he did something almost no one does today. He turned toward it. He began writing down his visions, drawing the symbols, conversing with the strange archetypal figures that emerged from the depths. He entered what he later called active imagination, a conscious descent into the unconscious. This radical inner journey would become the Red Book, his most personal and profound work, hidden from the world for decades. And what did he find in the depths? Not just darkness, but meaning, structure, myth, a vast symbolic language that connected personal pain with the timeless stories of humanity. Jung realized that his so-called breakdown wasn't an illness, it was a breakthrough, a psychic death of the old self, and a rebirth into something larger, more whole, more real. Most people avoid these moments. We call them depression, burnout, or midlife crisis, and rush to fix them. But Jung saw them as sacred initiations, the psyche's way of demanding that we evolve. Through his pain, Jung discovered that the unconscious isn't just a storage bin for repressed memories. It's a living, creative realm, a place where symbols, archetypes, and forgotten truths reside. But to access that realm, we must let go of control. We must risk ego death. We must, as Jung did, face the inner world with courage, even if it breaks us first. Because the soul does not grow through comfort. It grows through confrontation. And sometimes the only way out is deeper in. What is active imagination? The images of the unconscious place a great responsibility upon a man. Failure to understand them or a shrinking from them means a loss of life. Carl Jung. So what exactly is active imagination? To Jung, it wasn't a creative exercise or idle fantasy, it was a sacred dialogue, a conscious conversation with the unconscious mind. Most people think imagination is just daydreaming, fleeting thoughts, mental movies, creative distraction. But active imagination is different. It's not about escape, it's about encounter. Here's how it works. You take a dream, a symbol, a disturbing emotion, and instead of analyzing it intellectually, you engage with it. You let the image live and breathe. You visualize it. You speak to it. You listen to what it says back. You let the unconscious respond. Jung would sit in his study, close his eyes, and descend inward, not to control, but to witness. If a figure appeared, a wise old man, a dark animal, a wounded child, he wouldn't dismiss it. He would ask it, "Who are you? Why have you come?" This wasn't fiction, it was a genuine encounter with the unknown parts of himself. Sometimes the figures were kind, other times terrifying, but always meaningful. This is not imagination for amusement, it is imagination as revelation. Through active imagination, Jung discovered that the psyche is not flat. It's alive, symbolic, mythic. And if you listen, if you approach it with reverence instead of resistance, it will reveal truths that your waking mind could never grasp alone. Jung believed this method was essential for healing and wholeness. Because what we repress doesn't disappear. It waits in the dark, and only by facing it directly can we integrate it. So no, active imagination isn't just in your head, it's a doorway to the soul, to healing, to becoming someone more real than who you were yesterday. Why you feel numb or creatively blocked? The greatest sin is to be unconscious. Carl Jung. Have you ever felt flat, disconnected, like you're just going through the motions? That numbness, the creative block, the emotional fatigue. It's not laziness, it's not a lack of willpower. It's a symptom of soul loss. Jung believed that when we cut ourselves off from imagination, we cut ourselves off from life. In modern life, we're trained to value logic, speed, productivity. But imagination, that gets labeled as childish, unnecessary, even dangerous. And so, without even realizing it, we exile a part of ourselves. The inner world, our images, symbols, fantasies, becomes a wasteland. And with it, our joy dries up. Our purpose fades. We become machines in human bodies, successful but starving. Jung called this the desert of the soul, because when imagination is suppressed, the psyche goes into silence. Not because it has nothing to say, but because we've stopped listening. The tragedy? That very imagination you've ignored, the stories, the visions, the emotional stirrings that come in quiet moments, they were the medicine. They were your compass back to yourself. Jung didn't believe imagination was a luxury, he believed it was vital for wholeness, a bridge between the conscious ego and the deeper self. Feeling numb isn't a personal failure, it's the psyche's cry. Come home, you've forgotten how to feel. The cure isn't more content or more productivity, it's sacred inner work. It's pausing long enough to let an image arise, to let a forgotten dream whisper, to let your own soul remind you that you are more than what this world has told you to be. So if you feel blocked, stuck, or numb, don't push harder. Go inward, reclaim your imagination, because deep inside that silence, something is waiting to be born. The Red Book, A Journey Through the Unconscious. The years, when I pursued the inner images, were the most important in my life. Everything else is to be derived from this. Carl Jung. In 1913, Carl Jung stood at the edge of a psychic abyss. After parting ways with Freud, he didn't numb his pain. He didn't distract himself with busyness. He descended. What followed became the Red Book, a haunting visionary manuscript where Jung recorded his dreams, visions, and dialogues with mysterious inner figures. It wasn't fiction. It was a map of the soul, and at the heart of it were two recurring guides. Philemon, a wise winged figure who emerged as Jung's inner teacher. And the shadow, a dark, threatening presence representing the parts of himself he had long denied. But here's the secret Jung discovered. These weren't just images. They were real, not in the physical world, but in the psychological one. They had personalities, opinions, wisdom, warnings. They were autonomous forces inside him, waiting to be heard. He didn't analyze them from a distance. He spoke with them. He argued, questioned, listened, and sometimes bowed. This was not madness. This was active imagination, a sacred dialogue with the unconscious. Jung's descent into the underworld wasn't a breakdown. It was an initiation. He learned what few dare to learn. That buried beneath your rational mind is a vast mythic landscape full of symbols, archetypes, teachers, and shadows that are uniquely yours. And here's the truth most people miss. You have a red book too. Maybe you haven't written it down, but it lives in your dreams, your fantasies, the faces you imagine when no one's watching. The question is, are you willing to open it, to meet the Philemon within you, the inner sage who knows where you've come from and where you need to go, to confront your shadow, not as an enemy, but as the part of you holding your unlived life? The Red Book wasn't Jung's alone. It was a template for how you can begin your own journey into the depths of your soul. Inner Figures and the Symbolic Mind, 1205. The psyche consists essentially of images. Carl Jung, close your eyes and imagine a child alone in the dark, or a stern old man watching you from the edge of a dream, or a shadowy figure who keeps following you through unfamiliar landscapes. These aren't just random images, they're archetypes, ancient living patterns that emerge from the collective unconscious. Jung believed that behind our thoughts and emotions are inner figures, timeless symbols that carry meaning deeper than language. They are not figments, they are psychic facts. You may meet the wise old man, a figure who speaks in riddles, offering cryptic insight just when your ego feels most lost. Or the divine child, fragile, innocent, but glowing with potential. Or the shadow, dark and unsettling, yet containing parts of yourself you've exiled. These archetypes are not foreign, they are you, in symbolic form. They hold your unlived stories, your wounds, your wisdom. And here's the danger: if you ignore them, they don't go away. They grow restless. They show up as mood swings, projections, obsessions, or vague unease. But when you engage them, when you invite the symbolic mind to speak, something shifts. You begin to dialogue with the soul. The rational mind wants to solve, but the symbolic mind wants to reveal. It speaks in myth, metaphor, and image, not because it's confusing, but because some truths can't be said directly. This is why dreams matter. This is why spontaneous visions or fantasies carry power. They are the psyche's poetry, encoded messages from your depths. Jung taught that true healing comes not by eliminating these figures, but by befriending them, giving them a voice, listening without fear, and integrating their wisdom into your conscious life. To live without symbols is to be cut off from your inner compass, but to live with them, to see life as a conversation between ego and soul, is to awaken to a reality more vivid, more truthful, more whole. Fantasy versus vision, the key difference, 1430. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Carl Jung. Not all imagination is equal. There's a vast difference between fantasy and vision, and Jung drew a bold line between them. Fantasy is escapism. It's what the ego spins to avoid discomfort. It's the romantic daydream, the superhero illusion, the internal movie that flatters your pride or numbs your pain. It doesn't challenge you. It protects you from reality, but only temporarily. Vision, on the other hand, is the raw, unfiltered communication of the unconscious. It arises uninvited, from dreams, from symbols, from silence. And it often shakes you. In active imagination, you don't control the story wadai, you enter it. You don't script the characters, you listen to them. And what they reveal may not be easy to hear. A vision might confront you with your fear, your failure, your longing. It might show you a wounded child you've ignored, a terrifying shadow you've judged, or a truth you've spent years avoiding. But unlike fantasy, vision doesn't lie. Jung said that fantasy is a product of the ego, while vision comes from the self, the totality of who you are. Fantasy flatters the surface, vision calls you to the depths. This is why active imagination is not a game. It's a confrontation, a sacred inner dialogue, a descent into your own underworld, not to escape life, but to return with the truth you need to live it fully. So the next time your imagination stirs, ask yourself, is this fantasy, or is this a vision? Am I escaping, or being invited deeper? Because your soul isn't here to entertain you, it's here to awaken you. And vision, real, raw, unedited vision, is how it speaks. Society's fear of the imaginative soul, 1710. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Carl Jung. We live in a world that trusts machines more than mysteries, where logic is law and imagination is often dismissed as childish, dangerous, or unproductive. In modern culture, to imagine deeply is to be irrational. To feel too much is to be unstable. To hear the voice of your soul, madness. Jung saw this as a tragic distortion, not because imagination is always safe, but because it is sacred. He believed that the Western mind had become terrified of what it couldn't explain. We exalt the measurable and mock the invisible. We diagnose the dreamer and worship the data. But in doing so, we exile the most vital part of the psyche, the self. The imaginative soul isn't irrational in the chaotic sense. It's irrational in the ancient sense. Deeper than logic, older than words, and closer to truth than intellect alone can grasp. Jung warned, when a society rejects imagination, it breeds spiritual starvation. It produces people who are productive but lost, connected but empty, awake but asleep inside. So what happens to the soul that still dares to imagine? It becomes a stranger, an outsider, a problem. But Jung said, the imaginative soul is not the problem, it's the path. A society that suppresses imagination suppresses healing, insight, and renewal. Because it is in the irrational that the symbols come. It is in the strange that your dream guide appears. It is in the silence that the self speaks. To reclaim imagination, then, is an act of rebellion and of restoration. It means turning away from the screens and into your dreams. It means risking mystery in a world addicted to certainty. And above all, it means trusting that the images arising from within you are not delusions, but messages. Sacred, necessary messages from the deepest parts of who you are. How to start your own active imagination practice, 1935. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. Carl Jung. You don't need to be a mystic to practice active imagination. You just need curiosity and the courage to listen inwardly. This isn't about escaping reality. It's about stepping into a deeper one, the inner world that's been waiting for your attention. So how do you begin? 1. Create sacred space. Set aside quiet time. Turn off distractions. Light a candle. Play soft music or sit in silence. Let your body know this is not a task. It's a ritual, a descent. 2. Start with a feeling or image. Begin where you are. Maybe you had a dream you can't shake. Maybe a strange image keeps returning. Or maybe it's just a feeling. Numbness, confusion, yearning. Let that be the doorway. 3. Close your eyes and visualize. Allow a scene to unfold. Don't force it. If a figure appears, speak to it. Ask, who are you? What do you want me to know? Let the dialogue happen. Write it down if it helps. The key isn't control, it's relationship. 4th dialogue, don't analyze. Yet, this isn't about figuring things out right away. It's about experiencing. You're not dissecting a symbol, you're building a bridge to it. Speak with the shadow. Walk with the child. Listen to the wise old man. These are not fantasies, they are parts of you. 5. Journal everything immediately after. Write freely. Capture what you saw, felt, heard. Don't judge. Over time, themes will emerge. Patterns, symbols, insights. Your unconscious is speaking. Let it finish the sentence. 6. Dream incubation. optional, powerful. Before sleep, ask a question. Hold it gently. Don't demand an answer. Just write it down, feel it, and invite a response from your dreaming mind. Upon waking, write everything you remember. Dreams are the raw language of the unconscious, your imagination's nightly whisper. 7. Repeat with reverence. This isn't a one-time exercise, it's a lifelong relationship with your deeper self. The more you return, the more the unconscious trusts you, and the more clearly it will speak. Jung's method of active imagination isn't about creating meaning. It's about uncovering what's already there. The symbols, the voices, the forgotten truths. This is not play, this is inner alchemy. And it begins with one simple decision: to turn toward your soul and finally listen. Your imagination is trying to heal you. 2200. The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. Carl Jung. So many people today feel overwhelmed by strange dreams, chaotic emotions, wild wandering thoughts, and they wonder, what's wrong with me? But what if the very thing you fear is the thing that's trying to heal you? What if the noise inside you isn't madness, but a message? Carl Jung believed the imagination isn't random. It's intelligent, purposeful. It doesn't just reflect your mind, it reflects the soul. So when your inner world becomes loud, when symbols erupt, when strange visions appear, when your dreams make no logical sense, don't dismiss them. They are attempts to make you whole. The unconscious doesn't speak in rational language. It speaks in metaphor, in mystery. It shows you what words can't, what your ego won't. And yes, sometimes it looks messy, frightening, even wild. But that's because the healing process isn't polite. It's primal and deeply sacred. So if your imagination is pulling you inward, let it. If strange images keep showing up, welcome them. If you feel broken, stop. You're not broken. You're being called. Called back to the parts of yourself you've abandoned, to the stories you've buried, to the symbols that once guided you, before the world told you to ignore them. In Jung's darkest hour, when he feared he was losing his mind, he wrote the Red Book. He followed the visions. He trusted the figures. And in doing so, he emerged not just healed, but transformed. You can do the same. Your imagination isn't your enemy. It's your oldest companion. And it's trying to bring you home, to yourself, to your wholeness, to the forgotten kingdom within. All you have to do is listen. The shadow in your imagination. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Carl Jung. When you first begin to open the doors of your imagination, you might expect peace, inspiration, or divine clarity. But instead, what if what greets you is rage, shame, terror, a figure snarling in the dark? This is not a mistake. This is the shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is everything you've rejected, buried, or exiled within yourself. It's the anger you were told was bad, the sexuality you were told to hide, the fear you couldn't face, the power you denied. And when you invite imagination back into your life, you don't just get the light, you get the whole truth. In active imagination, Jung found that when people sat with their inner visions, the shadow would often arrive early, not to torment them, but to be seen, to be heard, to be integrated. Because what you repress doesn't disappear. It waits. It waits in dreams. It waits in the body. It waits in the imagination for your courage to finally turn toward it. The mistake most people make is to suppress the shadow even further, to run, to label it as evil, crazy, or not me. But Jung's wisdom was radical. He believed the shadow holds treasure. The very parts of yourself you fear are the same parts that carry your aliveness, your boundaries, your intuition, your raw emotional truth, your capacity to love with depth and fury. So when you meet your shadow in imagination, don't fight it. Talk to it. Ask why it's here. Let it speak. Yes, it may challenge your ego. Yes, it may show you parts of yourself you'd rather not see. But that discomfort is the cost of wholeness. And the reward? A self no longer divided, a soul no longer split, a life no longer lived in fragments. The shadow isn't here to destroy you, it's here to complete you. And the imagination is the sacred stage where that reunion begins. Imagination as the bridge to individuation. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. This is where it all leads. The visions, the dreams, the strange symbols and shadowy figures, they're not distractions, they're invitations. Because at the heart of Jung's life work and your own inner calling is one central path: individuation. Individuation is not perfection. It's not becoming what others expect. It's becoming whole, bringing together the light and the dark, the conscious and the unconscious, the ego and the self. And imagination is the bridge. When you practice active imagination, when you dialogue with the symbols in your dreams, when you stop pushing away the parts of yourself you fear, you're not fantasizing, you're not escaping, you are returning to the wisdom within you, to the soul that never stopped whispering, even in your silence, to the self, your deepest, most unified identity. Imagination is how the self speaks, through images, through stories, through symbols that seem irrational to the ego but make perfect sense to the soul. That strange dream, that unexpected vision, that recurring inner figure you can't explain, they are the messengers. So no, you're not going crazy. You're waking up. You're descending inward to climb higher into yourself. You're breaking the surface of numbness to feel again. This journey isn't easy. Path to individuation never is. But it's the only path that leads to a life with depth, with purpose, with meaning. Jung gave us a map, not a formula, but a direction. And imagination is your compass. If you follow it, not blindly, but bravely, you will meet yourself. Not the mask, not the role, but the soul you were born to become. And that is the quiet revolution that changes everything.